What's up, fellow bike nerds? Welcome back to the Weekly Rewind, where we catch you up on all the hottest cycling news stories from the previous week. This time around, we're looking at some sweet new bikes, what might be one of the lightest tubes on the market, and even answering some of your listener-submitted questions. But first, we're breaking our own rules by starting off with some industry gossip, because Nukeproof is back. Well, maybe. Hopefully. Let's start off with some context. Nukeproof has been one of the most successful and well-loved brands in the mountain bike world for over 30 years, until their parent company, Wiggle, filed for bankruptcy last year. Wiggle and all of its subsidiary brands, including not just Nukeproof, but also Vitus, Ragley, and their e-commerce site, Chain Reaction Cycles, were sold to the Frasers Group, who themselves have a pretty seedy reputation amongst cyclists for a variety of reasons. But just last week, it was announced that Nukeproof had been purchased by Belgium Cycling Factory, who themselves have been involved in the cycling industry in some way or another since the 90s, and already own a couple other prominent brands, including Ridley and Eddie Merckx. Obviously, there's still a lot of uncertainty as to what the future of Nukeproof will look like under BCF, but there are some promising signs of a successful return of the company, not the least of which being the fact that they've apparently already hired on, quote, key members of the previous Nukeproof team. With their acquisition, BCF has received the intellectual properties not just for Nukeproof's bikes, but also their popular line of value-based components. So who knows, you might just be able to get back on that Mega you've been dreaming about or replace your clapped-out Horizon wheel set in the near future. Belgian Cycling Factory has said that they are planning to have Nukeproof bikes back on the US market by 2027. We'd imagine they're going to have some updated models by then too. So we'll be eagerly holding our breath until then. Believe it or not, our second piece of industry gossip is even more good news coming from the cycling industry. This time around, it's from Fox Factory, whose bike sector reported the first profitable quarter since 2022. Bike-related sales were up by 8.3% in Q4 of 2024, though still down 14% for the year as a whole. Fox Factory CEO Mike Dennison is cautiously optimistic about how their bike side of things are going to look in 2025. And in a public call that he had on Thursday, said that, quote, "We think there could be an upside in the bike business this year, but keep in mind we've had a couple of really challenging years forecasting in that business, so we're conservative right now." Later in the call, Dennison teased that these more favorable business conditions might provide, quote, "the first chance to bring some real, fresh, new innovative products to the market. Maybe something like this gearbox that they filed a patent for the previous week. Who knows? But either way, it's awesome to see positive news and optimism from one of the biggest component manufacturers in the mountain biking industry. Moving now from industry gossip to product highlights. And up first, we have yet another gearbox-equipped Enduro bike, this time coming from one of the more forward-thinking brands in the cycling industry, Geometron. The Geometron G1 GPI is an aluminum Enduro bike built around Pinion's 12-speed C112i gearbox. From what I can tell, swapping from a derailleur to a box of gears and the subtle chainstay length differences that have come with that, basically the only thing that differentiates this bike from the current G1. It's already one of the most versatile Enduro bikes on the market. Geometron says that this change has not only improved suspension performance by reducing unsprung mass, but also allowed them to fine-tune important kinematics like anti-squat. Speaking of suspension, the G1 GPI is still as adaptable as it's ever been. The rocker link features a flip chip on the shock mount, which allows the bike to be set up with either 165 or 172 millimeters of travel with its stock 230 by 65 millimeter shock, but is designed to handle a variety of stroke lengths, giving you the choice of running anywhere from 142 to 200 millimeters of travel in the back, paired with up to a 200 millimeter dual crown fork. There's also a significant amount of geometry adjustment in the mutator chip in the chainstay, and the 56mm head tube should allow for easy reach and head tube angle adjustment as well. Speaking of geometry, the G1 GPI is the first bike I've ever seen with a double XL frame designed to fit riders all the way up to 6'9". The G1 GPI is available in 6 sweet colors and a handful of buying options, with the frame and gearbox only starting at £5,099, working its way up to a fully decked out complete bike for £9,999. The second bike that we're highlighting for this part of the show actually sees even less revisions than the G1 we just mentioned. And that is the new BMC Teammachine SLR, which gets a reworked front end, switching from exposed cables and hoses to a fully stealth cockpit. The rest of the bike, which is admittedly getting a bit old now, its first released back in 2020, doesn't see any other changes. Now, BMC justifies this relatively subtle update with an unspecified claimed aerodynamic advantage and to bring it up to speed with the higher-end Teammachine models currently available. That means the SLR can now be spec'd with any number of BMC's integrated cockpit systems. Other details that carry over from the previous model include BMC's Tune Compliance Concept, or TCC, which is said to help improve comfort and reduce fatigue. It also gets the same generous 30mm tire clearance and integrated through-axle nuts on both ends of the bike, leading to a very sleek and stealthy look. Prices start at $2,999 for the Teammachine SLR4 and top out at $4,999 for the Ultegra-equipped 8kg or 17.6-pound SLR2. Up next, we have a little something for all of the smallest rippers out there, and that is the fully redesigned Provello Zulu. The bike is sold with either 14 or 16-inch wheels and gets pneumatic tires. It also gets a pair of hydraulic disc brakes and some pretty dang progressive geometry for a youth bike, highlighted by a slack 66-degree head-tube angle. What's most interesting to me, and I think will be for most folks, is Provello's unique hassle-free approach to transitioning the bike from a traditional pedal-driven bike to a balance bike. They've spec'd the bike with self-extracting cranks for easy removal, as well as sell it with a set of foot pegs that slide onto the crank spindles that double as footrests and bottom bracket shields when in balance mode. They've even gone as far as incorporating a split seat stay on the drive side for easy chain removal, meaning you can switch the bike's mode in minutes with nothing more than a couple Allen keys, which is huge for parents who don't double as home mechanics. The new models also get a smaller rear cog and chainring for increased ground clearance, sealed bearings throughout, and sliding dropouts for easy chain tension adjustment without having to fiddle with brake caliper location. What's most impressive though is that even with all these updates and additional features, they've still managed to bring the overall weight of the bikes down by about 15%. And the smaller 14-inch model weighs just 13.5 pounds or 6.1 kilograms. But it is going to cost you. That same 14-inch bike lists for $599, and the 16-inch for $649 or $899 with the 60mm air suspension fork. Speaking of things that are lighter and more expensive than a lot of their peers, our next product is a $30 bicycle tube. But this isn't just any tube. The Aeron Superlight Races are some of the lightest tubes on the market, with their road variant coming in at just 21 grams. One of the ways that Aeron was able to save weight while also increasing strength and durability at the same time was by swapping out the plastic valve stem that's usually found on TPU tubes with an aluminum one. It also features a removable valve core, which again isn't overly common on TPU tubes. Like I mentioned, the Road Superlight Race, which is designed for 23 to 28mm tires, weighs just 21 grams, a few grams under the current welterweight champ, the Tubolito S tube. The Aeron Superlight Race line of tubes is also available for gravel and mountain bikes, all of which list for $21.99 and are each some of the lightest tubes available in their given discipline. Our final product to highlight from this week is an all-new pair of grips from Leatt, which have a fancy non-Newtonian gel-infused core. According to Leatt, this gives the Reflex 6.0 grips a noticeable improvement in vibration damping and shock absorption to increase comfort and reduce arm fatigue. The grip itself features an ergonomic profile that tapers slightly from the outside of the bars, further reducing hand pressure. There's quite a bit going on in terms of tread, with the triangular block pattern at the bottom, and up top there's a mixture of traditional mushroom-style ribs and a flat elevated section that Leatt calls their bump pad under the palm. The grip is available in 2 diameters and 4 colors, and given all the thought that seems to have gone into this grip, it could be a great option for you to consider if you've dealt with hand or wrist fatigue in the past. The grips are also right on par with other lock-on grips at just $29.99. It's time now for our deal of the week, where I share with you my hand-picked choice from the 99 Spokes deals page. And this time around, it is the 4th gen Santa Cruz Bronson CC, which is currently 53% off at Cambria Bikes, making it just $3,799. Best yet, at the time of recording, they have all sizes available. In addition to Santa Cruz's legendary carbon frame construction and VPP suspension, this model gets a full Shimano XT group set, a Fox 36 Performance Elite fork, and race face arc wheels. Now, before you get nervous about buying a previous generation bike in 2025, let me reassure you that this thing is still plenty modern. For starters, it's UDH compatible and has pretty dang similar geometry and suspension to the current 5th gen bike. Honestly, the biggest difference might be its lack of in-frame storage. But hey, for 53% off a bike that was nominated as Bike of the Year just 1 year ago, that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make. If you're interested, we've got an affiliate link in the description. Up next, we're going to be answering a few listener-submitted questions that were sent in via the 99 Spokes Instagram page. Our first question comes from @SnoozeEra, and it has to do with the subject that I've been pretty interested as of late, and that is crank length. They're currently running 170mm cranks and their flip chip set to the high position. They say that they're interested in trying to run them in the low setting, but are worried about excessive pedal strikes. So ultimately want to know whether they should stay with 170s in the high setting or try 165s in the low. I say as long as your wallet has room for it, then I would absolutely go for downsizing your cranks. I'm not going to get into all the nitty-gritty here, but there's been an ever-growing pile of research that shows shorter cranks can not only help us reduce pedal strikes, but are also better on our joints, and in some cases may even be more efficient. If and when you do make the switch to shorter cranks, you might notice a couple things. I actually just switched from 165mm cranks, which I've been running for the last couple years, to some super short 155mm. The first and by far most obvious change was the dramatic increase in ground clearance, which has allowed me to basically turn off my brain and just spin through techier climbs that I'd otherwise be ratcheting my way through. And honestly, feels like cheating. There's also a noticeable increase in pedaling cadence. This is paired with a slight reduction in torque per revolution, which is why I downsized from a 32 tooth to a 30 tooth chainring. But again, keep in mind that that decreased force per rotation is paired with more rotations per minute. And that's why I didn't notice any tangible loss of power over the course of an entire ride. So to summarize, yes, I would definitely recommend trying out some 165 or even 160mm cranks. And honestly, even if you decide that you prefer keeping your bike in the higher setting anyway, I think there's definitely some performance advantages that you're going to get from those shorter cranks, regardless of what flip chip setting you go with. Our next question comes from Instagram user @FaithfulLegacy, and they're wondering if we think Enduro bikes are getting too close to the downhill bike category. And I'd say, unless you're trying to make a living selling downhill bikes, then the answer is no. I'm a huge sucker for versatile bikes. I think they're super cool, and the latest crop of pedal-friendly rigs that can navigate all but the gnarliest of descents is pretty awesome in my book. Obviously though, there is still a place for downhill bikes. While I personally don't own one anymore, I still have quite a few friends who swear by that extra little bit of special sauce that only comes from a purpose-built, purebred machine. I also love the fact that downhill bikes continue to exist as the technical test mules for the mountain bike industry, kind of akin to what F1 is for the auto world. We continue to see quite a bit of innovation make its start in the high-performance world of elite downhill racing, before trickling its way onto our plebeian trail bikes. And even if it's just for that reason alone, I think the downhill bike will continue to be with us for a long time in the future, even as enduro bikes grow increasingly more capable. Our final question comes from Instagram user @MateVRC, who wants to know which TPU tube is best for road racing and is at least as durable as a butyl tube. Well, Mate, I have to admit that you have exceeded my area of expertise with that question. My only experience with TPU tubes is as a spare for my tubeless setup mountain bike, but I still think it's a good question. So I did a little bit of research. It seems like a lot of folks on various forums, as well as a handful of journalists, are singing the praises of the Revloop Race Ultra's strength and durability. So that could be a good place to start. You could also take a look at that Aeron Road Superlight Race Tube with its aluminum stem that we talked about earlier. If anyone else has a recommendation for a strong but lightweight TPU tube, then it'd be awesome if you leave that down in the comments. It's time, as always, to end the weekly rewind by sharing something that got me stoked from the previous week that I hope will do the same for you. This time around, I am tooting our own horn just a little bit because 99 Spokes has added another trend that they're analyzing to their trend page. And this time around, it is electronic shifting. It's pretty interesting to see the various paces that each cycling discipline has adopted this new technology. For example, in 2022, just 7% of trail bikes had electronic drivetrains, whereas over 50% of road bikes were being sold with electronic shifting at the same time. If you're curious to see how other cycling innovations, such as tire size, frame geometry, or brake type have evolved over time, then head over to 99spokes.com/trends. Thanks as always for tuning into the Weekly Rewind. I look forward to hanging out with you guys next week. And until then, remember that bikes are for everyone. Have fun out there.